The Battle of Gloucester Point, Virginia, was the first reported exchange of fire in the American Civil War following the surrender of Fort Sumter. On April 15th, 1861, the day after the U.S. Army garrison surrendered Fort Sumter to Confederate forces, Abraham Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers, like we said last week, to suppress the rebellion of the 7 Deep South slave states.
Right.
And he wanted to reclaim federal property that had been seized by them. 4 Upper South states that permitted slavery, including Virginia, refused to furnish troops for this purpose and immediately began the process of secession from the Union to join the Confederacy. And Abraham Lincoln didn't like that.
Virginia was like, we were just gonna be sitting here like Sweden,
right?
But now that you're trying to get my guys,
I don't think so, man. Especially when I already know what you want to do to my slave rights here.
Can't do it.
We
got to go.
17th
April 1861. The delegates previously elected to the Virginia Secession Convention in Richmond passed an ordinance of secession from the Union. The ordinance was subject to a ratification vote of the people of the state to be held on the 23rd of May, 1861. But the actions of the convention and the Virginia's Governor John Letcher effectively took Virginia out of the Union before the vote could even be taken.
Well, obviously, they're like, hey, we're going to secede. We're going to give 3 weeks to vote on it. No, you guys already said you're going to do it. You're already out, pretty much.
As the convention authorized the governor to call for volunteers to join the military forces of Virginia to defend the state against federal military action.
Oh, Virginia. On April 22nd, Governor Letcher appointed Robert E. Lee as commander-in-chief of Virginia's Army and Navy forces. On April 24th, Virginia and the Confederate States agreed that the Virginian forces would be under the overall direction of the Confederate President Jefferson Davis.
As these developments showed that Virginia would complete the process of succession, Lincoln was like, you know what? I'm not even waiting for that little vote on the 23rd of May. He goes, guess what, guys? I made it for you. You're now part of the Confederate States of America.
Yes, sir. Whether you like it or not now.
27th of April, 1861, Lincoln extended the blockade of the 7 original Confederate states that went up to South Carolina. And he was like, we need to add North Carolina and Virginia to this list.
I wonder why North Carolina, though, yet. North Carolina hasn't even done anything.
Yeah, because he already knew, though. You can't have that little gap in between.
That's right. May 3rd, 1861, Major General Robert E. Lee of the Virginia forces appointed Colonel William B. Taliaferro, commander of defenses at Gloucester Point, Virginia, on the York River opposite of Yorktown, Virginia.
All right.
General Lee instructed the colonel to cooperate with Virginia Navy Captain William Whittle in the construction and defense of a shore battery to cover the York River at that
initials
location.
Are WCW. Nice.
Yeah, so he's now William Whittle is constructing defense of the shore battery to cover the York River at that location. So we all know that we know that the Confederate Army likes to build up and the Union Army just likes to watch them and go, what are they doing?
They're not even serious.
They're like, look at these guys.
They got a bunch of our posts in all these states, guys. We have nothing left from any of these. There's like a couple little spots that we got, but they're not doing anything.
They're not serious.
They're not. They can't. We don't even recognize them. They're still here. So stupid. 6th of May, 1861, Taliaferro ordered a company of 50 filthy men. I want the filthiest men.
I want the filthiest damn men you got.
He ordered a company of 50 men of the Richmond Howitzers, a Virginia volunteer artillery regiment, with 2 6-pounder cannons, and he wanted them to report to Gloucester Point to assist in the defense and operation of the shore battery. He's like, we need those guys. Get them over there.
50 more.
The artillery men arrived at Gloucester in May 7th in 1861. This force had not yet been formally transferred to the Confederate States Army, or to the Navy.
Yeah.
So they're just on their own, I guess, with the backing of Confederate States. But the Virginians were acting in concert with the Confederacy, and so basically they're Confederates.
I mean, obviously we already established that they're under the control of the Confederate Army anyway, or at least the Confederacy. I don't think the Army is even official yet.
Not yet.
In early May of 1861, the Union Navy already had learned that rebel Virginia forces were constructing fortifications at Gloucester Point on the York River. On May 7th, Union flag officer Garrett J. Pendergrass ordered Navy Lieutenant Thomas O. Selfridge Jr. to examine the reported fortifications. So, yeah, why don't you go check that out?
Yeah,
All right. On the same day,
building.
There they are. They're doing it.
Right.
Lieutenant Selfridge, on that same day, in command of the USS Yankee, which was a converted steam tugboat of 328 tons with 2 guns, sailed the Yankee up the York River in a reconnaissance with the purpose of developing intelligence on the fortifications of Gloucester Point.
Okay.
Yeah, intelligence that
they thought they can sneak in a steamboat and nobody would notice.
Right.
No. Sorry, guys.
We're just tugging along. Don't mind us.
Just moving along, boys.
Don't mind these guns that are on the side of our ship either. Don't worry about them.
As the Yankee approached to within about 2,000 yards of the shore, the battery fired a shot across the boat's bow. The Yankee slowly continued on its course. The battery then fired another shot at the boat. Lieutenant Selfridge reported that the shore battery fired 12 shots at the Yankee. But in a later account, T. Roberts Baker of the Richmond Howitzers stated that Virginia forces had shot 13.
He's like, nuh-uh.
You forgot that last one.
Forgot that last one.
Selfridge is like, you're right. Lieutenant Selfridge reported that all but 2 of the battery shots were short. The Yankee fired 4 shots and 2 shells at the battery in return.
So did the other 2
hit him? Had to have. Right?
All but 2 were short, all right? Or maybe the other 2s went over. I don't know. Selfridge stated that he could not hit the opposing force's guns because of their elevation and because his guns were too small to damage the battery and fortifications in any event.
It's like they didn't learn from Fort Sumter at all. They didn't.
I mean, it's only 2 weeks out.
Jeez.
What are they supposed to do in 2 weeks?
Maybe it worked this time.
I need bigger guns.
Right. Wow.
The Yankees' guns were light 32s. Selfridge opined that the rebels had 2 long 32s and an 8-inch shell. He thought the rebels had a force of about 40 men. Well, he was about right. He had actually filthy men. 50 filthy men. 50 filthy. In fact, the battery only had smaller 6-pounder guns on this date. So he overestimated what they had. Maybe the guns sounded like long 32s, but they weren't.
Right.
But 2 of them hit.
The problem is they had the light 32s on that, and they're made for
close to close.
Right, hand-to-hand boat contact.
Boat-to-boat contact.
Boat-to-boat contact where you pull up next to each other and start shooting.
Either or, it's clear that the Confederate didn't even have big guns either, because all of them were short except for 2.
Right.
So they weren't even hitting their long ones. So there's no way they could have had long 32s.
No. After the exchange of cannon fire, the Yankee turned around and headed for its base.
They're like, that's enough.
They went to Hampton Roads near Fort Monroe. Selfridge did not mention damage to the Yankee in his report, but T. Roberts Baker of the Virginia force, he said, pretty sure 2 shots hit the Yankee guys. I'm pretty sure. Neither side reported any of their men killed or wounded.
So Baker saying, yeah, I'm pretty sure we hit them.
A lot of them were short, but there's at least 2. And it coincides with Selfridge saying all but 2 were short.
2, right. Despite Baker's later account that Colonel Taliaferro directed the actions of the Richmond Howitzers at Gloucester Point, Taliaferro stated in a report on May 8th, 1861, that he arrived at Gloucester Point after the engagement had taken place. He said that Captain Whittle had directed the firing at the Yankee. Whittle has denied this. Both of these guys are captains and colonels and stuff. Why would not one of them take credit for it?
Because they didn't get the major call from the head guy.
Why? Well, he's the colonel. What more do you want? A general? Isn't only who's above a colonel? The colonel is typically above the rank of lieutenant colonel. The rank above colonel is typically called a brigadier, or the brigadier general, or the brigadier general.
Right.
And then the general. Right. Or then like the major general. Right. They have so many freaking ranks. It's just crazy. It's crazy. But still, colonel's obviously one of the top goes.
Right.
So
he still wasn't the highest, so he had to take answers from somebody else. Lieutenant John Thompson Brown of the Richmond Howitzers was in immediate command of the small forces of artillerymen who manned the battery at this very time. Some sources credit him with firing the first cannon shot of the Civil War in Virginia. Brown was promoted to captain May 9th, 1861.
Good for him. By May 11th, the Virginians had placed 2 9-inch guns at the battery at Gloucester Point and had 2 more ready for placement there. By June 25th, the Confederates had 14 heavy guns in place at the battery. The men of Richmond Howitzers were relieved and moved from Gloucester Point to Yorktown on May 26th of 1861. So, did they take Yorktown?
Not yet, right? The Richmond Howitzers participated in the Battle of Big Bethel.
I guess Yorktown was already in Virginia, so.
Right. The Richmond Howitzers participated in the Battle of Big Bethel, which we will cover on the 10th of June.
Coming up quick.
Similar minor engagements between Union and gunboats and Virginia shore batteries occurred soon after the action at Gloucester. At the Battle of Sewells, we'll get to that.
Yes.
Battle of Aquia, we'll get to that. And the Battle of Pig Point, which is later on.
Which will be next week.
The Battle of Gloucester Point can be considered with those subsequent actions as part of the Union campaign to blockade the Chesapeake Bay and the entire coast of the southern states.
Oh, yeah.